Councillor Frank Ross, Right Honourable Lord Provost and Lord Lieutenant of the City of Edinburgh, Angus Robertson, MSP, Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution, External Affairs and Culture, Jenny Gilruth, MSP, Minister of Culture, Europe and International Development, members of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. I would say honorable ministers from Malawi, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, last year, I was humbled by you all when you appointed me honorary Co-Patron of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. Now this year, I'm humbled by you all for this warm welcome to the heart of Edinburgh, where I get to meet members of the partnership and celebrate the climate cooperation between our two countries. First Lady and I are most amazed at even entering to this place. We were met with the hand clapping, and I said, wow, what in the world is this? We are coming home indeed. You will all recall that when I accepted the patronage and spoke at your AGM last year, I challenged Scotland to use our bilateral relationship to inspire a new generation of climate activists. And when I joined your AGM again this year, just a few weeks ago, it was obvious the efforts you have made to step up to this challenge and to increase climate cooperation between our two nations. As important as those interactions were, they pale in comparison to how wonderful it is now to be able to be with you in Scotland in person. And given the strong and special links Scotland has had to the history, founding, and development of Malawi, it is not a stretch to call my maiden visit here really homecoming. Whether in Glasgow or in Edinburgh or in Perth, we have felt warmly received, fiercely supported, and genuinely embraced. Zikomo. Just yesterday, I was in Blantyre, Scotland, feeling overwhelmed by the realization that when I go to Blantyre, Malawi next week, being in both places just days apart will cement my belief that Scotland and Malawi are as close as twin sisters. In fact, I told some of you a while ago that yesterday morning when I text someone in Malawi to say, I'm going to Blantyre, they said, are you back in the country already? And it just shows you that when we come to Blantyre, we're coming home. So while in the Scottish Blantyre, I was reminded of how that closeness begun. As I toured the newly reopened David Livingstone Birthplace Center, in the 160 years since the time of Livingstone, generations of Scots and Malawians have worked tirelessly together in friendship and solidarity to improve the lives of people in both nations. What is perhaps most special about the unique friendship between our two nations is the degree to which it inspires civic action at every level of society. While the intergovernmental relationship is important and indispensable, it is perhaps the countless civic links between the two nations, links between churches, just been with the moderator of the General Assembly, Church of Scotland, or schools, hospitals, universities, communities, and businesses that are the beating heart of our partnership. Through the Scotland-Malawi partnership here and the Malawi-Scotland partnership in Malawi, these civic links are coordinated, represented, and supported, becoming more than the sum of their parts. That is why, although my coming to Scotland was occasioned by my participation at COP26, I've been looking forward to today's interaction with keen interest. I call this now the icing on the cake. I've been looking forward to see firsthand the fruits of this partnership and to hear about the many different individual partnerships between our two nations, particularly those that support climate change, mitigation, as well as adaptation in both Malawi and Scotland. As you know, over the past few days, I have done everything possible at COP26 to push other world leaders towards urgent action on the challenge of climate change in Malawi. Specifically, I have called on the G20 to make more ambitious cuts in their carbon emissions, which account for more than 80% of total emissions. I've called on developing nations to pay the $100 billion pledged towards mitigation and adaptation efforts in developing and climate vulnerable countries like Malawi, which is not a donation, but a cleaning fee. I've called on energy investors to bring new technologies to Malawi for the transition we need to make to renewable sources of electricity and clean cooking solutions for our citizens. I've called on global financial institutions to cancel debts to least developed countries, LDCs, so that they have a fighting chance to build back their climate change ravaged and pandemic battered economies stronger and greener. I have called on all nations to refocus bilateral and multilateral relations between and building green economies of the future, and I'm proud that this is something the relationship between Malawi and Scotland embodies. Although I will be returning home tomorrow, Malawi will continue to have a presence at COP26 to see that my calls are taken on board in the negotiations that are underway. The Malawi team, led by my Minister of Natural Resources, Honorable Nancy Temba, will also continue lobbying for support towards Malawi's revised nationally determined contributions, NDCs, whose implementation requires $46 billion over the next decade. I'm therefore inviting you to join Team Malawi as it hosts a side event on Monday, November 8th, 2021, from 18:30 to 19:45 hours at the COP26 conference venue to share highlights from the NDCs and to present progress on Cleaner Cooking Coalition by the private sector. In all of these efforts, we must not forget that the voices that matter the most are not the ones that make the headlines, the voices of the rich and powerful. When it comes to climate change, the voices that matter the most are those of the most vulnerable. And to me, that means two things. It means listening to the developing nations in the global south, where the effects of climate change cause the most suffering to populations that contributed to climate change the least. That is why I've used my time at COP26 to speak on behalf of those nations. Secondly, it means listening to young people who will be the ones to live in the future we are fighting for today. Technology allowing, in a moment, we hope to turn live to Lilongwe to hear directly from young people in Malawi about their priorities and expectations when it comes to climate action, COP26. With talk of 2050 or even 2070, it is important to recognize that young people are some of the most important stakeholders here. It is their world and their future that we're looking to save. It is vital, therefore, that we meaningfully engage young people throughout this process. Let me once again put on record my thanks to the Scottish Government for their long-term commitment to supporting these civic links through their funding for these two crucial national networks. The best way to safeguard the next 160 years of our nation-to-nation friendship is to ensure that we are continuing to inspire each new generation of young Malawians and young Scots to become involved together. I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible in the time that we have, which is very limited today, and to hear about some of the many civic partnerships that between Malawi and Scotland, which are looking to fight climate change. I thank you all. The Scottish Government, the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, and the Malawi-Scotland Partnership for all that you're doing to harness energy, expertise, and goodwill between our countries. The synergy that this produces, I believe, means the best is yet to come. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.